After the dramatic turn of events last Friday that we saw in the Oval Office at the White House, what really are the implications? There have been a series of events that have been taking place globally. Are we looking at a situation where Europe is headed towards peace? And what really is Russia's position as far as these issues are concerned? Joining us to discuss that with us, we have a very special guest. We have Russian Ambassador to India, Mr. Denis Alipov. Sir, thank you so much. And let me begin by asking you the developments that took place. We saw the arguments, we saw the statements that were made inside the White House when there was that meeting between President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and President Zelensky. How does Russia view the kind of developments that have taken place, and of course, what has happened since?
Well, if we speak about that particular meeting, I would say it would have been amusing had it not been about the lives of the people. Simply put, Zelensky basically came to Washington and said that he was prepared for peace. But first, Russia needs to withdraw. Military and financial aid to Ukraine should continue. And there should be security guarantees provided for Ukraine. Obviously, this position contradicted to what the US approach is at the moment, and I believe one should not be surprised that Trump was disappointed with that position articulated by Zelensky. Needless to say, all these demands are unacceptable to Russia.
Right. And, we have seen since then, there's been a lot of negotiations. I don't want to go into details, but last night many saw as a culmination, because once US has announced the end of military aid, we saw a lengthy statement coming in from President Zelensky, where he's talking about how they're prepared to sign any kind of minerals agreement. They're also saying that they want a stronger security guarantee. Given the kind of situation and stance that Russia has taken when it comes to such security arrangements with Western nations, how do you perceive this situation? Do you see that Zelensky has managed to avoid an escalation and is now falling in line with what US's aspirations are?
Yeah, I saw the news that actually Trump was giving a speech in Congress, and he acknowledged that he received some kind of a letter from Zelensky, who allegedly accepted the US approach, and allegedly has said that he immediately is prepared for peace negotiations. That would be if that is so, if that is true, that would be a positive development, I believe. But we are obviously not familiar with the contents of that letter. And so far, the US reaction has been positive, but we have not discussed the details. We have entered into the process of negotiations about peace with the US. So we would be prepared to hear from the US what are the proposals and what are the details that they offer. Let's see how it develops.
Right. The Ukrainian position on this thus far is that it is their territories that were attacked by Russia, and they are merely fighting back to protect their territory. How do you see this argument that has been repeatedly put forth by the Ukrainian side?
When we, many in the world speak about the aggression, Russia's aggression against Ukraine, I would like to point out, and I have gone public on that on some occasions before. The only aggression we should speak about is the aggression by the Kiev regime against its own people in the east, against Crimea, starting from 2014, starting from the violent, illegitimate coup that happened in 2014 in Kiev, something the eastern territories, the then eastern territories of Ukraine rejected and Crimea rejected. And then we stepped in defense of the people in the east of Ukraine and in Crimea. So the argument that we have always articulated, that we should address the core reasons of the conflict, have not changed. We should see the whole conflict from this perspective, starting from 2014, when Kiev launched a full-fledged military assault against its own people. So the rights of these people, civil rights of these people, should be the subject of negotiations. And of course, the threats that we feel from the Ukrainian territory should also be addressed. NATO has always been hostile, openly hostile towards Russia, and we cannot accept NATO in Ukraine or Ukraine in NATO. This is something Zelensky articulates, that the best security guarantees for Ukraine would be the membership in NATO. One of the basic reasons which we need to address within the resolution of the conflict over Ukraine is the provisions of security for Russia. The violations of those the threats that we feel from NATO expansion should be addressed.
So, please go ahead. No, that was actually my next question. What would be the terms, if there was to be a ceasefire, what would be the terms? You just mentioned one in terms of security guarantees for Russia, similar to what Ukraine is seeking security guarantees. Any other terms that Russia would have if there is to be a ceasefire at this point?
As regards the ceasefire, I believe that this is the subject for negotiations. I am not in a position to, I'm not privy to the details, but what cannot be changed is the acceptance and the realization that the eastern parts of the country are now parts of Ukraine, are now parts of the Russian Federation. This cannot be changed. This train has gone for Zelensky. We have never been eager to gain any territories in Ukraine. Never. Had Zelensky and predecessors addressed the problems within Ukraine, honored the rights of people, of all people within Ukraine, Crimea secession would never have happened. Eastern parts would never have seceded from Ukraine. We are accused of imperialism. This is complete nonsense. We have never wanted any territories from Ukraine. We have never contemplated that. The only thing we wanted is the security for ourselves and the well-being and the recognition of civil rights of the Russians in Ukraine. Now what we see and the whole world sees is the blatant violations of those rights. Russia has been cancelled within Ukraine. They banned Russian language, they banned Russian culture, they banned Russian Orthodox Church. This cannot be acceptable, and this should change, and this should be addressed in the negotiations, in the peace process that would ensue.
Right. So any return from Ukraine side, any demand for a return to the pre-February 2022 situation, that would be completely acceptable to Russia?
That is out of question. That is out of question. The former Eastern republics within Ukraine, Donetsk and Lugansk republics, they are now part of Russian Federation. We do not trade our territories. I have said this train has gone for Ukraine, for Zelensky. He had the chance, and we were prepared to compromise on these particular issues in March and April 2022. So they lost that chance at the ill advice of some Western backers of Ukraine.
In approach between certain Western European nations and the United States when it comes to these issues pertaining to Ukraine and Russia. Where do you see that disconnect? Because here you have a situation where many EU countries have come together to back Ukraine despite all that has happened, for instance, last Friday.
At present, Europe and Ukraine seem to be the main disruptors of the peace process, even in the eyes of Washington. Washington has taken a more realistic approach, and this is a welcome development. And we have seen that the US side is prepared to sit and talk with us and listen to us, to our arguments. We are prepared to listen to their arguments. However, Europe insists that Russia must be defeated. Basically, they are saying that the military support of Ukraine should continue. That means the continuation of war, contradictory to what Trump's approach seems to be. Now they're saying they're going to come up with some kind of a plan. I don't know what that would be. But obviously we are going to continue the negotiations with the US side, because the US is the one who calls the shots, and Europe is the one that depends on US in terms of security and military means and assistance and all these things.
Right.
Europe is not an indispensable partner in this process, in these discussions.
And US President Donald Trump has made several remarks about Europe, particularly regarding NATO and various policies of NATO. Do you think that Trump's approach has made NATO, in that sense, irrelevant?
He has said many things. I would view, these various statements cautiously. NATO presently is the basis for security of European countries. But what we have always maintained is that there cannot be a lasting and consistent security in Europe if NATO is hostile towards Russia, if we don't have a comprehensive security in Europe, including Russia. We are neighbors. Europe, if it feels endangered by us, should sit and discuss with us the comprehensive security arrangements, because we likewise feel the danger from NATO. We will not vanish, Europe will not go anywhere. We're neighbors. If we want security for all in Europe, we should have a comprehensive security. NATO, in that sense, is in our eyes, is an irrelevant organization, hostile towards Russia, which it has always been.
In that context, very interesting to see Foreign Minister Lavrov talk about European role in fomenting conflicts over the last century or two. So is that really the thought process in terms of this current conflict as well?
Well, I think this is an illustration to the arrogant position of Europe. The current arrogant position of Europe, and the danger that we always felt ourselves, and not only us. Lavrov recalled the Napoleon adventures, the Second World War, and Hitler sold on us and on others.
Right.
The colonial times all over the world.
Right. Do you think this whole backing of EU of Ukraine, the manner in which it's being played out, is this something that is sustainable? As you said, it is in fact sort of, many would perceive it as an initiation to increase the fighting in between Ukraine and Russia. But within EU as well, there are countries such as Italy, which are in fact warning about whether we need to go ahead or whether we should actually sit down at the negotiating table and talk about these issues rather than further taking up very strong militaristic position about this. How do you view this kind of difference that appears within at least a section of EU as well?
See that there are sober voices and sober countries within the European Union, and not all are adamant in their approach against Russia. Some countries have taken very realistic position and are talking about, so to say, peaceful coexistence with Russia. This is the very thing we have always advocated. We have to. We may differ on many things, but we're neighbors and we need to live in peace with each other, because otherwise there would always be, would always be a danger of conflict, and the current situation is the illustration to that.
Right.
Initiated by Europe, by the way. It was a very provoked situation created by the Europeans and by the US. Particularly the previous Biden administration.
Right. And you see a marked change because, now we are talking about the approach of President Trump, which is towards peace. Do you hope that even, other aspects which have been issues between Russia and US, sanctions, all of that also on the table? Because President Trump has today spoken about tariffs, for instance, which many see as a hugely different approach as far as US is concerned. That itself is expected to impact on global trade. How does Russia perceive all of this?
I think I would not be the right person to be asked about tariffs. Trump is speaking about. As regards the anti-Russia sanctions, certainly these issues should also be addressed within the negotiations about peace in Ukraine at some point of time. But it is a subject for negotiations.
Right.
The anti-Russia sanctions.
And lastly, what is the role that Russia sees for India as far as the current peace process is concerned, or the attempt or the roadmap towards the peace process at least?
India has taken a neutral position. And we honor that, and we appreciate that. India has been very vocal about the necessity of peace worldwide, and Europe in particular, in the current circumstances. As far as I know, the Indian government has endorsed the approach Trump has taken towards the peace as soon as possible. It corresponds with with India's approach. What we would welcome from India would probably be a more articulated and public appeal to Europe and to Ukraine for peace. Because, as I say, these are becoming the main disruptors of the peace process, insisting on inflicting strategic defeat on Russia, repeating the aggressor narrative. The only aggressor in this whole affair has been Ukraine against the people in Ukraine, Russian people in Ukraine, and against us. We could not tolerate all those dangers and threats that Ukraine chose to project against us at the behest of its Western backers.
Ambassador Denis Alipov, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us here at Times Now.